Hi, and welcome to another week's installment of Tips for AI Trailblazers by Demystify. I'm Kathleen Perley, your host and founder of Demystify. In this week's episode, we're going to focus on how to use AI to help in the development of others on your team or your own professional development. I'll be using a few of these examples in terms of how we can utilize the data that we're collecting to help build soft skills through demystifying this process of leadership and professional development. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen so you guys can see, and we'll get going. So one of the first things that we're going to start off with is performance reviews. As a former CEO, at one point, I think I had about 11 people that were my direct reports, which is way too many in hindsight, right? And every time performance reviews would come around, I would get overwhelmed with the amount of having to do as many as I did, and I would spend probably 4 to 5 hours per performance review, and oftentimes failed to remember things that happened at the beginning of the year, and really focus probably more often than not on the last 6 to 8 weeks because I tend to have a memory of a goldfish. And towards the end of my role, I really started leveraging AI to help streamline this process and wanted to see if my direct reports really understood or could notice I'm using AI or how it impacted how they felt they were getting leadership and input from me. And I found it to be really successful. I had several people say that that was probably one of their better performance reviews in terms of getting real actionable insights and feedback that felt comprehensive of what happened throughout the year. I did tell them eventually that I was using AI to kind of help assist with this, but it's a great tool to kind of help you get prepared for any type of performance review season. I know we're kind of coming on to that as the end of the year. So wanted to share this in particular. The first tip that I'll tell you is to create a single document or a single location for all of your one-on-one meeting notes. This will allow you to easily collect that data and utilize it as a knowledge source for prompting in AI. So what we'll do here is you'll see I've created a synthetic data. I created a kind of a faux conversation notes between a manager and an employee in the social media and content space that works at an oil and gas company, just to provide a little bit of context to the AI so I can have some data to use to show you guys how this works. So what you'll do is you'll just open your ChatGPT. Ideally, you'll want to be on Teams so that you have that data privacy in place. But if not, go ahead and just remove the employee's name so that there is a little bit of anonymous nature to it because we don't want to disclose that. So what I'll do here is we'll upload some of this data. So I'm going to go ahead and put in this prompt here saying that I'm a manager working on a performance review for one of my employees. And what I'm hoping to do is kind of identify 2 areas for improvement as well as 2 areas of successes that I want to highlight. One thing you'll note here is I will ask the AI to read the attached document and meeting notes in full prior to providing any responses. And this is huge because we oftentimes will find that AI will try to be quick on the draw in terms of responding and won't read everything in its entirety. So I'll go ahead and upload this synthetic data in terms of a performance review and kind of see how this kind of performs in terms of providing actionable insights that you can leverage. As I mentioned before, with any AI tool that you're leveraging, you should really use this as a layer 1 or, and I use layer 1 rather than rough draft because that seems pretty rudimentary. But this is a great way to get some insights on how to get started and kind of get over that blank page fear, especially when it comes to doing performance reviews. This is also great because as you can see in here, it will pull in the dates. So this was noted in April as it pertains to challenges in maintaining consistent content posting schedules. Also mention some things around Instagram and TikTok as it pertains to like dates and times around February and March. So this is great because it'll give you the ability to go back and reference your notes to provide some more insight. And the other thing that's really great is you have the ability to ask like, okay, so if it's telling us that we need to have more consistency in our content creation, like how do we go about that? What are some ideas in terms of developing that skill or kind of improving upon it? And, if you have experience in this, right, it's easy to kind of go from your own experience and provide that insight. But I found also that many of my managers, especially when I had them at like the more senior levels, they were managing and overseeing teams where they had maybe like kind of enough overview and understanding of that sector or that area of expertise, but didn't really have the depth. And so this is a great way to get some tips to help kind of supplement some of that when you're managing a team or individuals who maybe have some very niched or personalized experience that you might lack. So in this, I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this other follow-up prompt. As it pertains to content creation, what are some of the recommendations I should give that are specific? I oftentimes will tell it to reference industry best practices, just to ensure that we're kind of following along with the most important best practices in the industry and not getting anything that's completely outlandish. And so you'll see as you kind of ask these questions, it'll provide some of these recommendations. You might pick one of these, you might pick two, or use it as a jumping off point to have further conversation. If this is somebody you're managing that, in my example, right, I managed social media back in 2010 before Facebook even had business pages, right? So if I'm managing and working with a team member who's staying up to date on all the new trends, I might say like, hey, these are some of the ideas I have. What are your thoughts around these? And kind of really involving them in that conversation as well. So this gives you an idea in terms of like how to delegate tasks, how to repurpose things, developing a content calendar, and kind of doing some more batch content creation. So you can kind of pull some of these in. So these are just a few things that should help you as you kind of enter into performance review season. I will also say as an employee, I had my first ever performance review in over a decade back about a year ago. And I used my meeting notes from my one-on-ones as a way to kind of do my own self-assessment and identify areas that I wanted to improve upon and work on. And interestingly enough, I got some feedback that I was very self-aware, which I do think I have a high self-awareness, but I do think having the ability to leverage a technology that can take a unbiased look at my meeting notes and one-on-one notes to identify trends and opportunities for improvement was a huge asset in that as well. So that's one way to use AI to kind of help develop your team's professional development or your own personal development, if you will. The other way is to look at, employee feedback. A lot of parts of when we look at employee performance and how to develop others, we look at 360 reviews or kind of self-reviews. I do this often with my classes. I'm now teaching at the graduate level at the Jones School at Rice. I am very new to teaching. While I've always loved kind of sharing my knowledge and nerding out with others, being in a classroom environment is a new space for me. And so I oftentimes will ask for feedback at the end of each of my courses to kind of get some insights in terms of how I can improve. And so I'll show you how to use that data as a way to really kind of enhance your exposure and kind of your insights from this, because as you look at whether this is 360 reviews, customer survey feedback, or anything of that nature, this is a great way to glean some leadership skills or opportunities for growth, whether it's in yourself or one of your team members that you're managing. So I'm going to copy and paste this prompt in so you guys don't have to see me type and watch out for all my crazy spelling mistakes. So in this one, we're talking, really the idea of like take on the persona of a data analyst. And you're going to take data from a professor's class and provide some actual insights that can help the professor improve the class overall, as well as student engagement. Insights should be reflective of trends found across the responses, right? So we don't want any like crazy outliers. And we want it to be organized. You can talk about the format in terms of how you want to receive it. So I want it organized and nested lists that have like similar grouping under similar ideas. And obviously the last thing we always want to do, and you saw this on the last one, is we want to make sure that it's reviewing all the data before providing any responses. So I'll go ahead and attach the data here. So I'll upload this data. This will take a minute, but you can kind of see some of the data. I removed the students' names and emails as part of this kind of like cleansing of the data. But this really allows me the ability to kind of look at data overall and provide some insights. You'll notice the more data that you have, I believe this data set has about 82 responses. So it's a pretty wide, large data set, which is why it's taking a few minutes for it to process. But it will provide some really good insights in terms of, what are some of the optimizations I can do to enhance the class learning environment. I am actually going to teach the second iteration of this course in about a week. It'll be a 4-day intensive. So this will be very helpful as I kind of start to navigate that next piece. But this gives me an understanding of what people enjoyed in my class. And kind of also what are some recommendations for improvement? So more in-depth or longer demos, better organization. We use a platform at Rice called Canvas. It is a very new tool for me, not necessarily intuitive. So this is going to help me, kind of dig into learning Canvas a little bit more. And really kind of balancing the idea of new material and reviewing old material is another thing I need to work on. So this is kind of some of the ideas in terms of enhancements based on the feedback that was provided, which is great. So it gives you some really kind of interesting insights that you can kind of glean from this data at scale very quickly. The other thing that I think is really interesting that I've done with this data is also ask it to say, okay, as I prepare for my next course, can you kind of help me identify 3 personas or that you're kind of seeing emerge so that I can keep that in mind as I develop the next round of class materials. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. This should kind of give us those different personas. And so I teach at the MBA level. So I have everybody from full-time students to professional students to executive MBAs and everywhere in between. And so this kind of gives me an idea of, some of the different personas, what their needs are, how I can engage them. And this will be a great way to kind of really expand upon this. Obviously as it becomes to, and some of the trends I'm starting to see more organically is that, some of my full-time students prefer a little bit more structure to the content, whereas some of my professional and executive level MBA students are really wanting to dig into like real life applications and how it can work in their business today. So this just gives you another idea of how to utilize whether you're working on your performance reviews and using 360 data to analyze and provide feedback on, or customer surveys, or in my instance, class reviews and surveys and results from that. These are all very helpful. And the last thing I will leave you with is Zoom AI Companion. So I've been working a lot with students in terms of developing your presentation and speaking skills. And I feel Zoom does a great job of helping enable that. So if you have somebody on your team, I had a few over the years who had a fear of public speaking, didn't really feel comfortable with it. And as you can imagine, I'm a type of person who loves to talk. And so one of the things I had to work on personally was allowing and creating room for others to speak and engage, as well as slowing down my speech. I like to blame my mom and my dad, who are both New Yorkers, that I speak really fast, but honestly, it's probably more of the fact that I just get overly excited about what I'm talking about and kind of can't stop myself. But you do have this technology within Zoom Companion. You have to be on the pro license, but this is a free feature to turn on. And this is what some of the data looks like as you kind of analyze this. So it'll give you the talk to listen ratio. So if you are working with middle management, kind of encourage them to allow younger team members to kind of step up and take more of a leading role in meetings is really valuable. Their talk speed, right? So if that's something that they're working on, I find that, whether people are nervous or excited, in my case, they'll tend to speed up their kind of their speech. And so kind of being able to maintain that. And they'll talk a little bit about filler words. You can do a bit of sentiment analysis within your meetings as well to kind of get an understanding of like or how people are engaging with the content you're producing. As well as produce different types of transcripts for you guys. So these are just a few things as you think about professional development, whether it's for yourself or for people within your organization, that you can use AI to kind of help enhance that even further. and really kind of grow that. So hopefully these will help. And as you guys gear up towards end of year performance reviews, I'm hoping these tips will kind of help make that process more enjoyable for all involved. Next week, we'll be focusing on social media. So we're going to pretend that we are that performance review and talk about how to utilize AI to build social media dashboards for reporting and analyzing the data that's coming back in from a social media perspective. So hope to see you next week, and thank you for joining this week's Tips for AI Trailblazers.